Okay, Justin, thank you for coming on today. Appreciate it.
Mark, great to be here. Thanks for doing
Cheers.
this.
I'm going to do an introduction. So you're a former pro basketball player, former Irish international, now writer, director, actor, and yogi master. You're probably not a yogi master, but
Sure. You can call me all that except for the yogi stuff. That's just for fun and to make a fool out of myself on the interweb.
It's pretty funny. I quite like some of the captions. I get a good kick out of it. I was going to actually do a slide deck for some of your poses because they're brilliant. It actually looks like it's
go right ahead, public domain.
Just broadcasting your craziness. But I quite like. So I think it looks amazing, and also it's kind of seeped into mainstream sport now. Like, I mean, I've got swim classes with my work that I do every day. Like, we get them paid for, and a lot of the kind of like stability stuff I'm doing with these guys is like hot yoga poses, basically. That's what I'm seeing.
I think it's great. I originally got into it my first couple of years playing pro. I realized I was much better off just stretching after practice. Every team I ever played on, they wanted to stretch beforehand, and I don't know who I heard it from, but I just started stretching for a half hour after practice, as soon as we were done practicing, like, you know, even before we iced. And then I read about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar doing yoga in the 70s, and that's how he played in the NBA for 20 years. Right. And I sort of got into it when I was still playing, but after I was done playing, when, you know, I started to notice a lot of former pro athletes, they let their bodies go. They don't really have the discipline that they receive from coaching and all the structure from playing. And I just didn't want to fall into that. And, you know, even though I have taken some slides down those roads, but especially now in quarantine, you know, I'm just bored kind of. And that's why I wanted to just like put that on the internet, and it helps me motivate myself to try to get into these poses, that some of which I'll never be able to get into, but it's fun to try.
Yeah, I actually loved it because I thought that's what you were doing. I could see that you were like trying to put it up every day to keep yourself on track. It almost is it's like when you publicly say something, you know, you have to kind of stick to it or whatever. Not necessarily, but you know what I mean? So yeah, I loved it. You put some funny captions up, so it just made me laugh. But you're not a yogi master. You've established that.
Not at all. Not at all. I am a student on a journey. Let's put it that way. A
student on a journey. Maybe you'll be a master one day. You can have some pupils. I don't know.
Maybe when I can touch my toes without bending my knees. You know, that's the first step.
I mean, consider you're 6 foot. You're legit 6'10". Like, you're not, you know, fake 6'10" like some Americans.
I'd go 6'8", maybe 6'9" with shoes. I've never claimed or been accused of being 6'10". So.
Oh, right. Maybe I just said that to myself and you dunked on me that time.
What year did you play with the Irish team?
It was 2008. I think it was around then.
2008. Okay.
I was back for that, or was it earlier than that? Actually, it was the year before I went to Germany, so it was 2000, maybe seven.
Yeah, 7 or 8. Because you were just 1 year, right?
Yeah, well, and then I don't know, where did I go after that. I don't even know if the team was disbanded after that or they did another year or two. But it stopped being funded for about nearly 10 years, I think, at one point. I don't know when.
Yeah,
I kind of lost track. So
I caught on. I started with the team just out of college when there was where the team was mostly American born players.
Oh, right. I didn't know that.
And then we almost made it to the Euros, but you know, ran into some trouble with bad officiating and just bad luck and lots of things. And then there was a whole restructuring of Basketball Ireland, and the money went way down. And 2 years later, I was the only foreign-born player on the team. So I got two different worlds of the Irish national team.
I didn't never ask you about that. That's crazy. I want to hold on. Will we start from the start? But I really want to come back to that point because that's interesting. Because I just thought about it now. The financial crash happened in 2008, so probably somewhere around that time, all the funding and sponsorship.
It makes perfect sense. I mean, you could draw a line, but before that and after that, you know.
Yeah, and actually, interestingly, Basketball Ireland is now putting out some kind of distress calls to the government to kind of be like, the same thing's about to happen. It sounds like a lot of the sponsorship, because that's the first thing corporates do, right? They go, let's cut the funds to people like basketball out of the sponsorship stuff. Like I know my work cut. I probably shouldn't say this actually. Oops. Let's forget about that. Yeah, we'll let that bit out. Never mind who I work for anyway. So we'll start from the start. Okay, so you're from Chicago, Chi-Town, right? That's
yep.
where you're from.
Chicago.
And then did you were you aware of your Irish heritage? I know this sounds like a silly question, but I guess I don't know this. So, like, did you grow up in one of these kind of Irish communities where they kind of do Irish dance and play the tin whistle type places?
In my family, yes. Not in my neighborhood per se. There are, Chicago is still to this day pretty, as segregated as any city. So there's still neighborhoods of different ethnicities, and there are still Irish neighborhoods. I didn't grow up in an Irish neighborhood, but I had family that did. So that what you're talking about is more entrenched in those places. But I grew up as an identity, Irish being an identity, but I didn't have any real ties personally to Ireland. I had family from there. I had older relatives, aunts, uncles. My grandparents were born there, and but I always wanted to go to Ireland to visit. I didn't have any sense of, citizenship or any sense of like, going there to live or anything like that until I was playing my senior year at college, and I had a good senior year, and I was invited to some pro camps. And at the camps, I was talking to some agents, and they're like, "Do you have any European heritage?" And that's when I said, "Yeah, my grandparents were born in Ireland, actually." And different agents, their eyes lit up, because at the time, what the Bosman is.
Yeah.
So at the time, there was basically a 2 American limit in every country, and it's opened up more, and more countries are open now. But at the time, having a European passport as an American player was very valuable, and those agents put me in touch with Jerry Fitzpatrick, who was the coach of the Irish national team. Jerry Fitzpatrick kind of gave me the 1, 2, 3 about how to get my Irish passport, how to apply for it, through which consulate and things like that. So I was a citizen of Ireland before I ever set foot in the country. And then that summer, I went and played with the Irish national team, which to my surprise was mostly guys like me, born in America, grew up and playing American basketball in the American basketball system, but with Irish parents or grandparents. A couple guys born in Ireland, but still growing up in America, like Pat Burke. Pat Burke, first Irish player in the NBA, Irish-born player in the NBA. Marty Conlon played in the NBA. Cal Bowdler, drafted lottery pick from the Hawks. So we had a really a lot of talent on that team, and it was just my mind exploded, because I didn't understand that I thought I'd be the only guy. I'd be like, oh, there's other guys like me. I never,
Pat Burke was well, he was sitting on the bench a fair bit in the Suns, but like he was still he played in Barcelona, which is like, second best league in the world and one of the top team in that league. So he was.
He played in Greece. He played for the Magic. He was starting for the Magic for a couple years. He was starting
for the Magic. That's right. Yeah, that's crazy. So he was legit. Yeah.
The best part about Pat is that he was such a fan favorite. So whenever I'm hanging out in places, I live in LA, so I'm hanging out with guys, and I meet like other NBA guys, and like Pat Burke is my closest connection to other NBA guys. And I've never met someone and said, "Hey, do you know Pat Burke?" and have them have a bad story about him. He's beloved everywhere. He's a comic relief. He was doing like little commercials skits when he was with Phoenix. Yeah, skits. Yeah, he does impressions. He dances. He's great.
Seriously. He almost like living up to the Irish stereotype a little bit of being like a kind of a mess or whatever.
Absolutely. Oh, and I don't know if you ever heard like announcers when Pat gets in the game, every time Pat got in the game, there was an announcer that mentioned somehow that he was the only Irish-born player ever, and they'll make a joke about a shillelagh or this or charm or anything Shamrock something.
Yeah, because I kind of thought he was still American born, but he was actually born in Offaly or one of the counties. I can't remember.
I think he's born in Mayo, but he came over. His
Mayo.
family came over when he was young, like before grammar school. He came over, I think, or sometime when he was a young man. He went to high school, college in the States. He doesn't have an accent or anything.
Right. Yeah, and I think that was because the Irish people will always be like, "Oh, nobody from ours came through our school system and then went," which,
yeah. What happened, Mark? Come on, you were supposed to go first.
Don't look at me. There is a guy now. There is a guy now, but he left very early too, and he doesn't have an Irish accent either.
Who's that?
His name is Aidan, and I can't pronounce his second name because I've forgotten it, which is terrible because I'm trying to get him on the show. So I think he's got some. I think his mother's Nigerian. So he's Nigerian heritage, but he grew up in Ireland and was born here, I think. So I think he's in Louisville now. So
but the family went over to the States.
No, family's still in Dublin.
Oh, family's still in Dublin. Okay, so he went for high school.
Yeah, he went for high school. Yeah, he went for high school. So I think he left 15, maybe even 14. So he's completely lost the Dublin accent. And he's gone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's completely lost it. Like, it's gone. He totally sounds American. So I was expecting to make like Dublin accent, like thick Dublin accent, because that's generally what a Dublin accent is. But now he's got an American accent. But I suppose he.
But that comes and goes, though. At that age,
that's true.
He could come back to, like, Isaac Westbrook's, right?
Isaac, yeah. But his dad's American. Isaac, that's different. His dad's American.
Oh, that's true. So but when I met Isaac, because he told me his dad's from Chicago, so he'd been in Chicago and lived there. So we were talking about Chicago things, and I didn't grasp that I thought that he was saying that he like mostly grew up in Chicago. And then I started hearing like his accent switch back and forth. And he even commented, he's like, "No, I'm from Dublin, man. Like this is my home." But when when you hear the accent, when you're around it, you kind of absorb it. Some people can absorb it and just start, go into it.
Oh, big time. He does a little bit because he was on one of the Instagram lives, and I just listened to him for a second. He started talking about his dad and his family, and I think as soon as he started talking about his dad, he kind of floated into almost an American accent. But because his dad's from America, you can excuse it, I suppose, or whatever. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's Irish. I'm telling you, I came back from Germany, and I was hanging out with 4 American lads for the whole year. And I don't know what happened to my accent, didn't notice. And I'd been in the UK too, so that neutralizes your accent. And then you go to like Germany and you're hanging out with these guys like 24/7. And you just
can't help it.
Yeah. Like I'm not going to start, I can't talk like a really thick Irish accent with these guys. Like they're not going to know what I'm saying. So
right. You have to tone your own accent down.
Yeah, so you're just speaking clearly, you're speaking slowly, and and then I came back and all these Irish people were like, "Oh, you sound like an American now." Sorry, I'm not living in the country anymore. I haven't been living here for quite a while. Give me a break. Irish people are quite unforgiving with that kind of thing. They're like, if they think you're kind of, think you're not Irish or something, they get a bit funny. So that's fair.
No, I've heard that. I've heard that plenty of times, and then the opposite is true for people like me, for guys like me. I mean, in my experience, and I'm always surprised by it when people in Ireland refer to me as Irish, and I'm always like, okay, well, yeah, I'm Irish blood, but I'm American born and raised, and when they hear like, oh, you have a passport, your last name's Naughton, you're Irish, and then I hear stories of guys from Ireland that when they go to the States and come back, like, oh, you're not Irish, you're American now.
It's not like an American. Yeah, it's just, yeah, it's not it's just kind of like an Irish thing. Like, they if you stop acting like an Irish person, if you lose your Irish way, people will kind of generally call you out and be like, that's why nobody likes Bono, basically, because he wears shades and he doesn't sound like I don't know. Anyway,
it's the whole who do you think you are kind of thing.
Yeah, right? exactly that. Anyway, so we go back to high school. I didn't even ask you. So which high school did you?
I went to St. Ignatius in Chicago. Had a good career, good high school career. Played against some of the best players in the country. Chicago is to this day a hotbed for high school basketball. Went to, let's see, I had here's my my senior year of high school story. So I had a few offers before the season started. In D1 they got the signing period before the season and the signing period after the season.
Okay.
So I had a decent junior year and I had a couple of small offers, but there's this guy named Marlon London who I grew up playing ball with. He was on my AAU team, summer league team, and he was a year ahead of me. And he was just like me. He had a decent junior year, and then his senior year he blew up, and he just had a great senior year. And by the end of the year, he had like Bobby Knight in the stands, Coach K in the stands, and he ended up going to Kansas full ride. And that was kind of my what I saw myself as. I was like, all right, I got these small offers now, but at the end of my senior year, I'm going to go Big Ten, ACC, Big East. Anyway, suffice to say that didn't happen. I had a decent senior year, but a couple of the offers dried up. And then I picked one school, and it was I thought I was like dead set on going there. And then the day after the season ended, they fired their coach, so I had no offers.
So you kind of said I'm okay, I'm okay, and then you're like, I'll take this one.
Because you can't sign in the season. Right. You can't commit. You can't sign during the season. You can only, at the time, I don't know, maybe it's changed, but you can only sign in the signing period before and after the season. So I had committed verbally to a school mid-season, and then at the end of the season, I was ready to sign, and then they fired their coach. So they didn't hire a new coach before the signing period. I've heard
I heard other stories like that where like there was a time limit. It was an English guy on an English basketball podcast, and he was there was like a 5-day window, and he had to sit out pretty much a whole year because he missed it. He just sat out the year, like versus whatever you did. So anyway, it was just interesting to see that's the deadline thing is quite, if you miss it.
And it was, at the time, the whole prep school thing was happening, but it just wasn't in my universe to look into prep schools. I definitely would have done that if I had the know-how to do so. If I had like the people telling me, hey, reach out to this prep school or talk to them. I didn't really have that in my world at the time, but that would have been a great option for me because I was like a late bloomer. I didn't have that full growth spurt. I didn't kind of grow into my body until I was like 18, 19 years old. So I was a really tall, really skinny motherfucker. Can I swear on this? Sorry.
Yes, you can.
I didn't know if I ended up I had a couple of Division II offers, and I ended up taking one at Grand Valley State in Michigan.
Yeah.
So I played there for 4 years. I redshirted 1 year, and so I had another year of eligibility at the end of my career there. And during that time, I kind of fell away from basketball. I wasn't really into it because I didn't get along with the coach. I didn't feel like I just kind of like felt a little bit lost. And that's when I got into screenwriting and making films and just being more creative. And I kind of felt like that's the route I wanted to take. And by that time I was like, I thought to myself, of course I wanted to play pro ball, but it didn't seem like it was something that was going to be my future. And so my senior year, my 5th year of college, I transferred to another Division II because you don't have to sit out if you go Division II to Division II. If I would have transferred Division I, I would have had to sit out a year, and I had already used my redshirt year.
So you just transferred. Okay.
I transferred to Cal State LA, and thankfully got involved with a incredible coach called David Unai, and he really took me under his wing. He really helped my game. He's a legendary coach in California. He originally was mentored by John Wooden. He was in the UCLA system. He went on to coach another school called Cal State Dominguez for I think 30 years, and he won 400 games as a coach. I mean, he was at the end of his career when I got there, but he was also known as a big man coach. He was a instructor at the Pete Newell Big Man Camp in Vegas every summer. I don't know if you know that one.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah, actually, I've heard of that one.
It was it is a camp that even like, you know, Shaq would go to. Like NBA centers would pay their own money to go there because it was just, you know, instruction on for centers, for big men, power forwards.
Yeah, there was like an Olajuwon did one then. I think after that, he kind of had one that he was doing.
So yeah, that was my actual senior year of playing ball, and I had a great year. I was I runner up for conference MVP. I led the league in rebounds and field goal percentage, and I think I have some rebounding record at school, you know. And I just kind of just played out of my mind because I think it was because I had that release of getting away from the school that I didn't really want to go to in the first place. I didn't really feel like I was at home there. I didn't really feel like it was my school, like my college basketball experience. I felt like I kind of missed out on that because of, you know, the mistakes I made in high school by not signing with a school before the season.
yeah, that can happen though. It's a lot of timing and stuff like that as well. So when you look back at it, it's like, you know, okay. So then at that point, you kind of, because you had that experience at the end, you're kind of thinking, okay, so I actually want to consider the professional basketball aspect because you had such a good year after that.
Because it was an option then.
All right.
I didn't have any way to look. Like I could have like put my tapes out to agents and stuff and done it all grassroots style, but I wasn't thinking along those lines until I went to Cal State and had a great senior year. Now I had stats to send out. Now I had a lot better game tape to send out. I mean, I put together a highlight reel of my dunks that year. Like I had such a good year. And then I got invited to a couple pro camps, and I signed with an agent at one of them, and he got me a job my first year in Austria. So I went to Austria for my first year, and then I was off and running. But before that, I had gotten my Irish passport because, you know, I played as a Bosman. The team I played for in Austria had 2 Americans plus me. Right. So that's basically how I got into Europe, you know, by that Irish passport and
I got you.
The Irish national team.
Yeah, and that as you explained before, that's kind of I was explaining because it happened to me in Germany. We had 2 Division 1 guys, and then we had 2 other Division 1 guys who had an Italian passport, and I think it was a German. I think that was German passport, but they're both American Division 1 players. But like he's like, it's a golden pass because you're basically another American. Almost, you're not taking up an American spot, basically.
Exactly.
It's, as you say, it's kind of changed now. It's like some of the leagues now accept more Americans. I think the German first league is like, I think you can have as many as you like. So a lot of teams will have 7 Americans, and it's crazy.
Yeah, that started happening. My third or fourth year playing pro, I remember talking to my agent and being like, and I would say like, well, what about that team in Holland that was looking at me last year? And he would be like, oh, well, Holland's opened up now, so they can have as money. I don't remember what other countries were, but are there still countries that is every country open now? I think, is Spain still?
I'm not sure, but it's interesting, the different models, because it's almost like Mike Bree was talking about this, and he was saying that like the best model he thinks is Germany, because you've got a better product if you've got 7 Americans and you can just pick from. Of course, they have good sponsorship over there. The economy's doing pretty well, so the teams are well sponsored. The funding's there, so they'll get really good Americans to come over, and then that's a better product. More people want to watch it. So that from that point of view, it makes sense. And then there's other leagues I think that like to have, like the Irish League at the moment. Arguably, you know, if I was looking at it objectively, you might say it's taken a step back because the 2 Americans are not allowed on the floor at the same time. So the Super League is now like, it's kind of strange. Like, so basically you only ever get to see one of the guys. And a lot of times there's another guy sitting on the bench, might play limited minutes. So it's just strange the way the leagues are, but I'm not really sure how the leagues have gone. I'm not sure in Spain how things have gone. So
Yeah,
don't know.
I agree with Bree. I think that you do create the best product when you don't have those limitations.
Yeah.
I understand having a certain number of local players on the court at the same time. My experience with that was because I had played as a Bosman for 5-6 years, and then I went to a tryout for a Japanese team for the Japanese league, and it was in Vegas, and I had a contact that got me into the tryout, and I had kind of had a rough year in Europe at a team that didn't really pay me all my money, and just constantly just back and forth. I wasn't getting along with the coach. I wasn't getting along with the team president, and I didn't feel like I wanted to go back to that team. I didn't feel like I wanted to go back to that situation. And I had this tryout for the Japanese league, and I just put everything into it, and I felt like that was, and they signed me out of that tryout, and I felt like that was the moment where, because there's no Irish passport used for the Japanese league, obviously.
Yeah, that's true.
But that was the time when I felt like, okay, I know that for myself I can play as an American, even though I am American, but like I only got to those teams in Europe as a Bosman. And there were times, there were teams I played for I played in Switzerland, I played in Spain, I played in England, and there were times where teams I played for, I felt like I was at the same level as the guys that were being paid as Americans, but I wasn't getting the playing time that I thought I should have got. I wasn't getting like the respect of like the equals, like, some countries are better basketball countries than others. It didn't happen in Spain, but like in Switzerland and Austria, they're not really known for their basketball. They have some really good local players, but I would be put on the bench in place sometimes of a local player who wasn't that good, but like Bree was talking about, like they wanted to bring in the local guys to
develop
the product. So, but they would never do that to the American guys, the guys that weren't the Bosmans. So I kind of had a chip on my shoulder. Like I want to play as an American because I grew up in Chicago. I know these guys. I'm as good as any of these guys.
Yeah, of course.
So when I got that job in Japan, just based on my own merit, not having to use the Irish passport, that was a big step forward for me. Like as a basketball player, it's kind of like a solidification, like a validation for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about that actually. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
So what I was going to say was Japan, that they run that league really well because they have their rule is you have to have 2 Japanese players on the court at the same time, and that's it. So the other 3 players in the court have to, are usually Americans or foreigners. So we had 5 foreigners on our team, and we'd switch them out, and that worked really well because you still get the local guys, to play at top level competition. But you have these imports that come in and bring the fans in. They do the dunks. They have the excitement. Like you said, it is entertainment. You still need to put a product on the floor that people are going to want to see. And that especially helps with the younger kids. The youth programs. So
interesting. Yeah, it's. I think it's a bit of a conundrum because it seems like the best way forward is to put the best players out. I mean, take the extreme example NBA, right? I mean, like if they decided they were going to play like 3 Americans and leave Europeans, I don't know. I mean, that obviously wouldn't work, but like something like that, like they just play the best players like that. That's a league,
right?
Like it's not like the Premiership goes, you have to have 3 British guys on the floor. So I don't know if there's
sure.
Maybe arguably.
Do you think that even the rule of having 1 or 2 local players on the court do you think that's good, or do you think that that's not?
I think I mean, what's the aim of the league, right? If the aim of the league is to have a sports league that's successful, then you should have a development league, which is the league below. Same as the D League, I suppose. Maybe but not, not that's different, obviously. But like you should. There's a league below in Germany, in the second league, where they have feeder teams into the first league in Germany. I know that, and you'll see
Yeah,
when I played the second division, we'd play against a team, and they'd be like, "There's this young kid. He's 19. He's really good, and they want to bring him on to the first team, but
sure.
they have a second team which is in the second league that they use to develop him, and then they actually will bring him up next year or whatever the case may be, and that's good enough. And like if the young player is good enough, then they'll get the minutes and they'll get on and play. That's the way I'm looking at it. So
Now, are those teams affiliated with the top level team?
yeah, they're affiliated. They're like generally they're in. It's I think it was the same club, and it was just they had two teams, and they'd be a top tier team, and then they'd even the second team would have Americans that they pay as well, and they'd be playing the second league. So yeah, I
See,
think yeah,
yeah, that makes sense as an organization because then
yeah,
you have a feeder system to go to the top level team.
yeah.
Yeah, I would fully endorse that, because and then what you're saying is the top league is open, that it doesn't have any restrictions like that for local
Yeah,
players.
top league you can play it, and if you're a local player. But the problem with, like, for example, the BBL at the moment, just uh, just talking to a lot of people and having spent a lot of time in the UK, and played in it and talked to players, is that the British guys don't really want to play there. The good British players will come back from like Division One schools, and they'll go to Europe or they'll go to like wherever just to get more
Sure.
money, because the British league doesn't pay very well versus some of the other leagues, and the standard isn't as high. But if you look at the British economy, like, it should more than be able to support like British basketball and the teams there. But for whatever reason, they're just not getting the sponsorship. Now, perhaps, I mean, the obvious thing is like that it's a minority sport over there, in the sense of like, rugby and cricket and
Sure.
soccer
It's
are the
low
top
on the
sports.
totem pole.
Yeah, and I think traditionally those sports are more popular. So how do you kind of propel basketball? I think participation-wise, basketball is number two, but then in terms of actually getting, just sponsorship and viewership, it's not. They had it on Sky for a while when I was over there for 1 year, but
Yeah, yeah.
like Sky 4, I don't know if anyone was watching it. So maybe the appetite just isn't there. Like, maybe it's just as simple as that. But you would think, like, given how, economically, or, how strong it is over in the UK, you would think that people would be able to get sponsorship and the clubs would be better funded and all that stuff. But it doesn't seem to be there. So it's just a bit of a conundrum. I don't know. It's one of these questions. The Irish Super League, it seems like a lot of the teams have gone to the model of partnering with university, and then they give two scholarships, master's degrees.
Smart.
That works. I think that's a good model, and definitely some British teams in the BBL that would have done that too.
Yeah.
So I think that's a way around it. But I don't know. It's a bit of it just depends on each country, I suppose. But
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the popularity of the sport in the country for sure. I mean,
yeah.
you look at Spain, and of course, soccer is number one, but basketball is important there. People watch, like, local people watch like the big teams play on TV. They pay attention to what's going on in the ACB. And from that, you have the youth programs spring up so that kids are Real Madrid fans for basketball or Barcelona fans for basketball. I noticed that more so than any other place, where I'd be living in Austria or Switzerland, outside of the town, outside of the people around the team. They'd be like, "Oh, basketball, okay, yeah." So how's that? I'd get questions about, like, how does it work? How do they score? I'd get, like, just the most basic questions growing up in the States you would never hear of, and you realize, like, this just is not very well known here.
Yeah, I think that's what it is then. It's just maybe the appetite for the sport. Like you said, in Spain, it's number two. Like, I had a guy at work there, just randomly Spanish guy, and he was just brought up, the national team is huge over there. Pau Gasol, the brothers, Gasol brothers, all those guys. And everybody knows them, like, they're just household names. And I think basketball is it's just massive. It's on a different level. Whereas, yeah, it's just not in the UK and Ireland as big as popular. It's kind of popular in Ireland, but it's just not that level. It's just not at that level. And
Yeah.
maybe it'll grow, but I don't know. I don't think.
Well, and like you said, the British born guys, the best players are playing elsewhere. They're not playing. They're not going back to the BBL. So I mean that's the key. I mean, Spain has produced such talent that has played in Spain. You know, whether before or after they play in the NBA, if they get to that level, but that's where the talent stays. You know,
yeah,
you don't see a lot of Spanish guys going to anywhere other than the NBA. You know, you don't see a lot of Spanish guys playing around Europe. You know,
yeah, that's true. That's true. They stay in the league. They stay in their own league.
Right.
So they've got good grassroots and they've got a good domestic league. So they kind of got their own. They've got their own thing, pretty much like America. Then they've kind of got, and you see that. I know the Eastern Europeans, a lot of the Serbian guys, they'll stay in Serbia, play in the Serbian league. I know Lithuania is similar to that. So I suppose the idea is to develop your own grassroots and just.
It's got to be built up from the bottom. Yeah,
from the bottom. It has to be, doesn't it?
It was interesting. I was listening to your talk with Bree about how it works in Sweden, because he's been there for a while, for a number of years, and he can see it. He's in a country that's mid-level, you know, lower to mid-level of European basketball, and he can see the difference of like why the best Swedish players are not going back to Sweden to play, you know, and it makes sense. You know, you got to start it from the ground up.
Yeah, and interesting. The interesting thing he said is because he's coaching academy, so these kids are about to go to potentially college, and he said there's, you know, they obviously think that they're maybe the best players in their club, and they might even be the best player in the country, but it's to try and open their eyes to, you got to get better than that if you actually want to make it to a certain level, because you're just going to end up being a small fish in a big pond, as I always say. So he brings them to tournaments against big clubs in Europe now, and instead of playing in the domestic schools leagues for the academy, he'll bring them to the big tournaments in Europe against like the Barcelonas and the big European clubs. And he said initially they were getting their ass whooped, but slowly over the last couple of years, they understand the standard and they train for 3 weeks and then go to a tournament. And he said if you book the flights early enough, it's not that cheap. So I guess the whole idea is to step things up. You need to start looking almost like competing with some of the top European clubs, which is a tough ask, but that's what he's trying to do. And he's said they've had some success. So they've obviously raised the standard of basketball in his academy just by trying to compete with those teams and kind of stepping outside of their own country, which is, you know, arguably America is like, you know, 50 countries in itself because it's so big. So like, I mean, maybe that's the next thing you have to look at is start competing with other teams in other countries, which is from proximity wise not the easiest thing to do. But it's just an interesting one because it's not something I would have thought of before. But when he mentioned that, I was like, and I know the academy in the UK as well does the same thing. So they now go to tournaments in Europe and initially weren't able to compete. The Sabonis school, they said they played those guys, and then eventually they got a couple of wins against them, and it took them 4 years, but they got there. So had they not been taking that step, there's no way they would have been able to, you know, if you don't know how high the standard is, you just can't get up to that level. So the fact that they've done it means there is a way, but you just have to put yourself in there, see what the level is, and then try and get yourself to that standard or something like that.
Yeah, and you know, talking to a lot of the Irish-born guys from the national team, from the senior team, hearing their stories about playing under 18s and under 16s for Ireland, you know, we would have nothing like that in the States. I mean, not even playing with the national team. I mean, if we were good enough to make a select team, like a premier AAU summer league team, you know, we didn't have to do everything on our own. We didn't have to, like, you know, go, you know, in terms of our own expenses, you know, everything's already set up because it's organized like in the country, in the system, where Ireland doesn't have that. And it's a question of money, you know, like when what you were talking about when they defunded Basketball Ireland, that was a blow to the senior team because we were almost there to get to the next level of the European Championships, but that also just devastates the youth teams, the underage teams.
True.
So, and that's where it has to start. Those guys have to have those experiences. You have to be 14 years old playing against, the Serbians, playing against the Lithuanians and the French, and getting those experiences, or else you're never going to have, if you don't play against top competition, you're never going to improve your game.
Never going to improve. True. Just to go back to it's a great point. And I think the underage teams now, what they started to do is when they cut the senior team, they focused on just funding the underage teams. I think they got the women's program back pretty quick. I think that's right. Or they kept that on, but they kept with the underage teams. And I think, honestly, we probably had the most number of players go to an NCAA Division I standard. It seems like, since I think Michael, I thought, was the first person to go over. There was actually two guys before that. I got that wrong.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. I thought it was Michael and Connor Grace.
I thought Mike was the first guy too. I was corrected. There was a 6 foot, I think he was close to 7 foot 6'11" guy. He stayed over there, and I tried to track him down. I got as far as a girls' team in New York. Do you know?
Oh, you talking about John Burke?
Yes,
John Burke. Yeah. He. That's right. That makes perfect sense. He went to Hofstra. Oh, I know him. Yeah. He was. I never played with him, but he was on the national team before me. Like I said, when I first came in, I was like one of a couple of young guys with Connor and Mike Bree, and the rest of the team was all in their 30s. So a lot of those guys, when we had reunions and stuff, John Burke was a guy that played in the early 90s on the national team. And so, they all knew each other. So I got to know the older guys, even though I never played with them. So Adrian Folty was on that team. Damian Seeley.
Yes.
And Gareth McGuire. Some of those guys that I still kind of, have contact with, even though I never played on the same team as them.
John Burke, that's crazy. I guess I would never thought he would have overlapped. But that's the guy. Yeah, he's coaching. He's
got some funny stories because his name's Burke and he's 6'11", and he got confused with Pat Burke at certain times.
Yeah,
so they're a little bit different players.
Yeah, I think he went to New York, and I read this article, and it was a good article about him. And I think at one point they thought maybe he could go to the NBA or something, but it didn't materialize. I can't remember what happened. But he's stayed over there.
Anytime a guy is 7 feet tall, there's gonna be a chorus of people saying he's gonna be in the NBA one day.
I mean, it's kind of inevitable.
You can't stop it. It's no matter what level the guy's at. If you can't teach height, as we say.
You could get it. Yeah, at least get a look at 7 foot. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's good. So maybe you can help me contact him because I couldn't get him anywhere.
I'll get you in touch with him. He lives in New York. He's a teacher.
Cool. Okay.
He's a teacher in New York.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear his stories. Because he left and never came back. And there's one other guy.
I would love to hear him on your podcast. He's a great guy. He's so entertaining. He's got a really low voice, and he's a fan favorite.
Does he still have an Irish? It doesn't really matter. Does he still have an Irish accent?
Yeah. He didn't come to the States before college.
Okay.
I believe he's from a small town. What is it? He's from Nace. Is he from Nace?
I think. I can't remember, but I think it was somewhere like Nace. Yeah,
somewhere. What's it? North of Dublin.
Nace is it's in Meath. So just in west.
Meath.
Yeah,
west of Dublin. Yeah. Okay, so he's from out there. So I always had a tough time understanding him. He had he never lost it.
Okay, I like it. Okay, I'll have to get him. John Burke. Yes, you said the name. I was like, that's the guy. Was it the girls' school team? Is that what triggered it, or did you just think it's got to be John Burke?
No, I actually I saw him on a we did a little reunion thing a few weeks ago. He was on it.
All right.
So like one of these, a Zoom meeting reunion with that generation
That generation.
guys. So
Oh, cool. Okay, I like that. How did we get to there? I totally lost my train of thought for the first time ever.
what were we talking about? We're talking about guys, local guys, improving the system of the country,
Oh, yeah.
and guys that are from there being able to come back and play in there and having a level, a talent level that's up to par.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Like, it was something Jordan said about. Yeah, I just think it's got to be something like an academy or something like that, and that would go play in Europe. I know that's a massive like undertaking, but like just to get that, just to see what's there. I guess younger, like under 16, under 18 Irish teams playing in Europe, that helps as well. But yeah, maybe it's not for me to solve, but it's just an interesting one. I just find it interesting, like to hear the different viewpoints on it. Okay, so I've got a couple.
I know there's a lot of people that have made strides to get things going, and it's also, unfortunately, it does start and end with money. I mean, it starts and ends when if the government is willing to put more funds into the system.
True.
One thing always we always talked about, especially the American guys coming to Ireland to play for Ireland. One thing we were just like, how is this? I know. How is basketball not bigger in Ireland and in the UK, countries that are very active, very their athletics is very important. They're very passionate about sports.
True.
But all the sports they're passionate about are outdoors. And these are countries that don't have the best weather. We were always like, why is an indoor sport like basketball that can be played year round indoors not as popular as it should be? But so that was that's our perspective coming from the States, where basketball is everywhere.
Well, I'll give you the old beach ball. So your perspective is green and yellow stripe. I can see the other side of the ball, the blue and the green stripe on this side. Our perspective is probably something like where we don't care because we're acclimatized to rain. We're used to it. So we love being out in the rain. And like, if you talk to Gaelic footballers, they'll be like, oh, I love going out in a, maybe some of them don't, but like, it's quite, you don't really care about the rain in this country because you're so used to it. Like you just go out anyway, almost like that.
What about the fans though?
It's not great, but like you just get used to it. Like you see the people out with their umbrellas screaming at the ref and stuff. Like it's kind of part of the culture almost. Like Gaelic's a mad sport anyway. Like it's very primary. Sure. So like it's it's just one of those sports. It doesn't matter if it's raining or not. Ideally, it wouldn't be.
No, I get
yeah. So how do we? I keep losing my train of thought. So yeah. So. We were going sir. How did we get onto Gaelic? This is the first time this happened where I've just completely lost where we're going with the points. It doesn't matter anyway. It's a podcast, for God's sake.
Who do you support in Gaelic now?
Who do I support? Well, I'm from a town called Longford, so
that's I mean. Do you still support Longford?
Yeah, like there's not much to support. I'll be honest. We're probably not. We're not very historically successful at Gaelic. And funny enough, when I came back from Germany, I actually played a year on the county team because my brother was on it. Yeah, my brother was on it. It's like the top level or whatever. They don't get paid, but like they train pretty much like professional. And my brother was on it. He was playing that year, and they just heard he had a brother who was 6'6" and could catch a ball pretty well, good pair of hands. And we were in Dublin, the two of us living together for that year. I traveled down and played County Gaelic with my brother. So that was fun.
Now the rule is you could never play for another county, right? Or could you?
Great question, actually. I'm sure some Irish person tell you this straight away, but because I've been away since I was 18 and came back for 1 year and played in the Super League.
So it's been a bit. Okay.
Yeah, it was actually a bit of a shocker because some of these lads are playing, they're trained the whole I think there's like 30 people on the squad initially, and then they cut the team down to like, I don't know, 18 to 20 players. So there's probably a load of lads training all year. And then I finished my basketball season and then just showed up with like the last trial or something, and they just stuck me on it because I was so big. But I felt kind of bad because there was a load of lads that love Gaelic, and I didn't really have a love for it in the same way. But because I was bigger, they just chucked me on the squad, and I got a free trip we did a like training camp in Toulouse in France and stuff. So it was pretty fun. But
yeah, that'll work.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Do your basketball skills transfer over to Gaelic?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not great. Yeah, I'm not great at kicking it over the bar. I'll be honest with you, a bit of a donkey, but I could catch it. And I was athletic enough to be able to like field the ball, and then I would immediately give it off to somebody else to go do something with it. So I was just trying to win possession essentially. And they actually wanted me to come back the next year, but I was going back to finish my studies, so I didn't bother. So yeah, that was my stint in Gaelic. It was good fun. It was really cool.
But you're still playing in the Super League, right?
Yeah, I decided to play another year last year, so we got to the cup final, which was good. What are you laughing at?
You sound begrudgingly. I guess I have played.
Yeah, I almost was like, why am I doing this? Like, I'm too old. I'm 36 now. Like, I mean, what am I doing? So we did all right. We got to the cup final. Actually, Mark Keenan was in the final against us, and with Temple Oak.
I love Mark Keenan.
Yeah, he's good. He's a good guy. So Mark, yeah, we lost to those guys. But
because Jay's on the team. Jay's Kaleem's on.
Yeah, I had to mark him.
And nice. Yeah.
Total mismatch. Like Jason's like way bigger than me, and I don't really play the five anyway. But we didn't have a five, so I just had to mark him. I was very tired at the end of the game.
I was over in Dublin a couple of years ago, doing some stuff for film production, and I called Mark up, and he said, "You want to come practice with us?" And I'd been away from basketball for a few years, but I still want to try to look like a player, because even though I'm done playing, I still get commercial auditions to play a basketball player.
Yeah.
So I still like pretend to be in basketball shape, even though I'm not. and I went to play for a couple of days with Temple Log, just warming up. I mean, this is in the summertime, so it wasn't even a full squad, but it was a lot of these young guys that were just running circles around me. And I wanted to go to play against Kaleem, just to give him, just to like play some one-on-one, another big guy. But Kaleem was, I think he was nursing a knee injury at the time or something like that. And Mark was like, "How you feeling?" And I was just dead tired. I was keel over at the end of practice. It's like I can't handle a real basketball practice. I haven't done this in 5-6 years. So
yeah, it's one of those ones that it just gasses you instantly. You can't last very long if you haven't.
If you're not used to it, doesn't matter how good a shape you think you're in. It's muscle memory of like running up and down the court, just pivoting. That was new. Like I was like, I never realized how I got away from that. Like I was so used to that my entire life, just pivot, like make the shoes squeak on the floor, and then turn direction. I was like, oh gee, every pivot I was like, my ankle's gonna break right now.
Yeah, that's how. Yeah, honestly, I'm at the point where like my body's starting to tell me to stop. Like the recovery is just terrible now. Like it takes a day and a half, 2 days after a game. It's really bad. So
that's what you got to switch to yoga, man.
Well, I kind of I've kind of started taking some type building and stuff like that. But I was thinking of doing another season again, but I don't know. We'll see. If my coach is watching, I am. If my girlfriend's watching, I'm not. No, I'm gonna do one more season, but I think that's it. Then that's definitely it. Anyway, this is
all right.
This isn't my story.
All right, I'll check in with you next year, and you say the same thing. If you don't blow out your knee, you'll be like, all right, one more season.
I've honestly said that for the last 5 years, but sure, there you go. Okay, there was some other points here. Oh yeah, the national team. What happened with the European Championships? Because I didn't know about that actually. Did you guys nearly make it to the European Championships, or how did that work?
Yeah, it's kind of it's a rough story. It's, I mean, it's not rough. It's not life or death, but it was just disheartening because we had this great team. We had a team, chock full of NBA players, guys playing top league Europe, and we also did have a couple of with Mike Bree and Connor Grace. We had some strong local, born and raised Irish players, and we were putting together a good run. And we came up against, they did a weird thing where we won our pool, and then we had a home and away against Denmark. And the way they did it was total points. It's cumulative points for the two games.
Okay.
And I don't think that we really realized that. It didn't settle in for us, that was what we were shooting for, because we were just thinking of, you win the game, you try to win the game. So the first game was in Dublin, and we were up by 20, 25 in the second half. And we were just feeling great. We were obviously a better team. We felt like we were just on our way up to the next level, and we just had to go to Denmark and win the game like we thought we would. But towards the end of the game in Ireland, the Danish team, they knew how it was working, so they went hard even though they were down by 20, down by 25. So at the end of the game, it ended up being I think just somewhere around a 10-point victory. So but a lot of those points were in garbage time. So when we went to Denmark, so that was our mistake. But then when we went to Denmark, the game was the worst officiated game I've ever been a part of in my career. I mean, the most obvious one-sided game, to the point where we had they were calling every time a Danish player got the ball, it was a foul on us. There was technical fouls called on us left and right, and there was, I mean, what just to give an example of how ridiculous it was, there was a player on our team dribbled the ball out of bounds and for a turnover, and he said to himself, fuck," like that to himself. The ref on the other side of the court called a technical on him, and he said because he was swearing at the referee.
Okay.
It was that kind of a thing.
Blatant
and the guy was like, no, I was mad at myself for turning the ball over. I wasn't even looking at you. His back was turned. So anyway, that was the type of game it was.
Terrible.
And the refs knew exactly how many points that we were down by for the series, because when we had the ball and we were down by the exact amount, and we had the ball with 10 minutes to go, 10 seconds to go, and Jay Larinaga drove the lane and literally gets tackled by two guys. Tackled. The Danish guys admitted to us afterwards, we were trying to foul. It was not an intentional foul, but just make sure you get him on the line. Don't let him score. And he's on the ground, no call, game over. And they win by 1 point cumulative. The Denmark beats us by 1 point between the two totals of the two games. And it was a whole big thing. They had to do a review, and it was completely one-sided. And that would have been that was the year that the next year a lot of guys didn't come back, because they're like, well, what's the point? And there was a lot of talk about how there was a bias against the Irish team because they had so many Americans, which may or may not be true, but
right. Yeah.
It seemed like there was something to that. But yeah, it was rough, because it seemed like Ireland was trying to get to that next level, where maybe that could have meant an influx of some things to help out the youth programs, to help out the senior team, to get more exposure. And it just didn't happen. We kind of had to go back to square one, and that's where we went. And then a year later is when the crash happened. So the money was just gone from the program. So,
And the way it works is like insurance money. The players have to be insured for their clubs. Isn't that the way it works? Something like that. Like there's insurance you have to pay to the clubs, and that generally gets covered by Basketball Ireland if they get if they get injured, that there's some kind of health insurance.
I would assume
something
so.
like
Yeah,
that.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember what it is, but that's what I was told in the UK. And eventually, when they had their funding cut, probably after 2008, 2009, they had the same issue. They had to let a bunch of their like Luol Deng and those guys.
Yeah.
Unless they're willing to pay it themselves, I think that's the way it works.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there wasn't any money for the players.
No.
Anyway, everyone was there. Basically as a volunteer to play for the team, but they did pay our expenses. Whereas, it's like that's the different level. You go to the Italian team; those guys are getting paid, thousands of euros per week to play for the team.
Oh, really?
And
okay.
then you go to the lower countries, and guys have to pay to play for the team.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of what Ireland went back to.
Yeah. Okay. They didn't have the funding, basically. Yeah.
Oh, I remember talking to local guys from Cork and stuff, and Basketball Ireland couldn't even pay their train ticket from Cork to Dublin. I'd heard stories like that, and I was like, well, a year ago, I was getting flown in from Los Angeles, to Dublin. So
it's just a huge, I guess there's not much they can do. Yeah. It's the first thing to go is the sponsorship, I suppose. Interesting. So, like, where would that, if you had beaten Denmark, could that have put you into? Was that the European qualifiers or something like that? Was it?
Yeah. So that would have been the qualifiers. So we would have just been in that tier of Europe, as opposed to being the first tier of Europe instead of the second tier.
Oh, right. Okay. So
that would have been
top tier. Oh, wow. That close. What, like a point off?
Yeah.
That's rough.
And just the most obviously biased refs I've ever come across. And I've played for some terrible refs. I played for I once got tackled like that. I had a breakaway dunk in was it Austria or Switzerland? I think it might have been Austria. I had a breakaway dunk, and a guy just came up behind me and just knocked me in the back, like with his fist. And I felt it. I'm like, I don't know how I didn't get seriously injured, and just no call. And we were up by like 20, and I wasn't even that mad. I was just more confused. Like, how is that not a call? And when the whistle blew, I went up to the ref and I said, why was that not a call? I mean, he literally punched me in the back. And the ref actually said to me, well, you're up by 20. You don't need the free throws.
You could have given me brain damage. That's how people break their ankles.
That was, I think, that was Austria. So that was my first year playing. So that was my introduction to the different ways that the game's officiated in different countries.
So you went Austria, did you say Switzerland as well?
I went Austria, Switzerland, Spain again I did play in the Super League for briefly.
Oh, did you?
I played for Star of the Sea.
Adrian.
I played with Adrian. Yeah. Darren O'Neill was the coach at the time.
I think I do know Darren actually. Yeah.
And then
you played in BBL as well.
And then I went to Japan, and then I finished in BBL.
I finished. Which club were you in the BBL actually?
Milton Keynes.
Milton Keynes Lions.
The Lions. Yeah, I think they're London Lions now.
They're London Lions now. Yeah.
Is that right? London Lions. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember the coach's name? If it's the same guy, I wonder.
It was a guy named Michael New.
Oh no, it's a different guy.
He was an American player. He was a player coach, about my height.
Yeah, he must be gone now. It's not. There's a different guy there now.
Who is it now?
I can't remember his bloody name. I don't know. I can't remember. His name's gone from my head.
A couple of years ago now.
Yeah. So out of all those ones, did you probably the Spanish league? Which one was it? Like, do you know which the?
No, because I wasn't. I definitely didn't play in the top league Spain. I wished I would have.
Okay.
Obviously, that was the goal. But No, I think I was in the third league, Spain, and that was the time that was right before Japan, where I wasn't getting my paycheck. I wasn't really getting any communication from the team. They still owe me a couple €1,000 to this day.
Really?
So,
Yeah, honestly, like everyone I talked to, there was another guy on Flinder Boyd. He played for GB,
yeah,
and Flinder was that was the last episode, and he was just saying like he didn't get money from Greece, and I was saying I knew another guy called Ralph Bucci who also played in like first league Greece, which is a good league, and he didn't get paid either. And you just hear endless stories. I was actually, when I got my offer, I had one offer in Italy, one offer in Germany, from this camp I went to, and I was told not to go to Italy just because they might not pay over there some weeks.
yep.
And like the coach was even jokingly saying, "Oh, we don't always get the money on time," and I was like, "Well, I'm definitely not going to do that." Like that sounds terrible.
Yeah, it is like a little giggle for them. Like, oh, you thought you were gonna get your full money? No, you'll get maybe 80% next week.
Yeah, and it's like they think it's like cool to just do that. It's just the yeah. I just thought that was very strange. Like you're in a kind of, it's a pretty precocious situation, or not precocious. Sorry, you're kind of in a like a. There's not much you can do. Like you don't have a lot of leverage in that situation.
There's nothing you can do. I knew a guy that boycotted, that he sat out, like he went on strike. He's like, I'm not gonna practice until I get paid. And the coaches were like, sure, go ahead, go sit down. And he's like, well, then I'm just gonna leave. I'm gonna find a new team. But you can't do that because they need to release you. You have to get them to release you to sign somewhere else. And if you're under contract, there's no complaint department.
Yeah, there's no HR people looking out for you.
There's no HR.
And they'll just let go. I mean, that was the other thing Flinder was talking about. Like they just let guys go, and like the whole, like I was telling Flinder, like we were just sitting in the dressing room. He came in at halftime. He's like, "Oh, some lads are going to be on a plane next week if we don't start playing." Like this is, and then pre-season they'll send guys home, and we just had guys coming and going. You must have seen it all the time.
All the time. We'd have a couple of days off for Christmas. We get back from Christmas, there'd be a new American. Yeah. There'd be a new guy. Like, oh, what happened to homeboy? Gone.
He's gone. Yeah, and sometimes it was like
doesn't say anything.
Yeah, sometimes it was like attitude as well, like just simple things, and like it's incredibly, I suppose, fickle is probably a better word for it. But like, like just it can be. I think that's the one thing I got from talking to everyone is just that there's a limit to it's very much a grind. It's not secure. Like you're doing it for the experience almost. You're doing it because you kind of got a hoop dream and you want to do it. But then there comes a point where you're like, I don't know if I can keep doing this, just because like
sure.
it's a total grind. You're kind of moving country to country, and unless you find a place you love and they really look after you and the money's good enough to kind of warrant you staying, it's very kind of, you kind of quickly realize it's tough. Like it's not an easy thing to do, actually. Do you know what I mean? To stay with.
It's not for everyone, and very little. It doesn't always depend on how talented you are. There's a lot of guys that I saw that were amazing athletes, amazing talents, and they couldn't handle being away from home. They couldn't handle being in a new culture. They couldn't handle just the day-to-day of like things aren't going to go, especially guys that play top D1. Like that might have been an attribute for me that I didn't play top level D1 ball or even Division I ball at all, because you do get used to some things, when you're being treated like a king. I mean, even though those guys aren't getting paid, which they should be, but those guys at D1, they have all the gear they need. Everything is structured. Some of the top level programs, it gets ridiculous. They have cooks. They have they've drivers everywhere. Like everything is set up for them, right. And they want for nothing. And then they go and whether if they don't get to the NBA or don't go to the ACB, maybe they're playing in a mid-level country, and now they're being told like, yeah, here's your apartment, but you're on your own. Oh, can I get this? No, you got to pay for that. Or can I do that? Guys don't know how to handle themselves. So you get used to a certain, you get accustomed to things. And
How do
luckily I
you?
played Division II. So I was no red carpets were rolled out for me. And so I was able to cope with some of those things in the mid-level European basketball
Yeah,
a little easier anyway.
that was the sentiment I got from particularly the D1 guys. A couple of them were coming over, going. I mean, they were getting shoved in apartments like underneath someone's house and stuff like that. Like one guy, Steve, I think he played in Stony Brook in D1, and he came over and he got shoved in an apartment, and he was kind of cool about it. But like, that's actually Steve Pratt, the guy who's in LA and he does basketball commercials. And he was in semi-pro. He was one of the he was on Andre 3000's team in semi-pro, and I saw you.
Really, I was in semi-pro.
Yeah, but you. Well, I don't know if you were in. Where they're on the court.
Yeah, what's his name?
Steve Prada, Prata.
Steve Prada. Oh yeah, that's right. You were telling me about him. I should probably talk to him because I'm sure we met before. I was one of the extras on that set because they just needed ball players.
Yeah,
and I switched uniforms a couple times playing against them.
Steve's so we were best mates in Germany. Well, best mates really. Me and him hung out all the time, basically in Germany,
sure.
And he got kind of stuck in a basement at the start, and he was like, "I can't stay here. Like, this is ridiculous." Like, some of the situations I'm sure are probably worse. Like, I got a reasonable apartment with the two German guys, and like it's probably good, but I've heard there's some terrible situations people end up in. It's like
here's one I got to. I committed to sign with a team in Switzerland, and I was back home in Chicago, and they sent me the contract, and sometimes they want you to sign it and fax it back or something, but they didn't ask me to do that. So in the contract it said you will receive a car in order to, like, they use the wording was funny, like you will receive a car for transit or for to be able to get around, right?
All right.
And that was great. I was like, okay, great. There's a car in the contract, because that was something where it's like, okay, if it's a decent contract, they'll include a car, include an apartment, and you'll take care of the expenses, but you don't have to, worry about getting a car when you get there. So that was in the contract. I flew over there, and I get there, and I'm talking to the team. I'm talking to them. So I wanted to like see the apartment. I wanted to see the car, because sometimes you just like want to make sure that it's real. Because when I got there, they didn't give me the contract, but they put me in an apartment with 4 other guys. And I said, and in the contract, it says my own apartment, my own car. So I'm like, all right, well, can I at least see the car and see the apartment before I sign, just so I know that if it's not ready yet. So it turned out the apartment they got for me was being used and lived in by the American that I was replacing. So they hadn't told him that he was cut yet.
Oh, wow.
They brought me in before they cut him. So then once I got there, he realized he was being cut, but he was a nice dude. So he like took me to his apartment and he showed it to me, and he kind of like took me around. Because that's you get guys, because I've been him before. I've been the guy cut, and he's been the guy replacing other guys. So guys kind of have a camaraderie about that. And I'm like, okay, well, this apartment's fine, whatever. And then I said to the team, well, I'd like to sign the contract, but can I see the car? And when I told the guy that, he was like, car? None of us have cars here. and I was like, that's weird, because it's in my contract. I swear to God, I'm talking to the team about the contract through the translator. He doesn't speak a lick of English, only in French. And when I say to the translator, it says a car for transit, and he says it in French to the guy, and the French guy, the president, looks at it and he's like, oh, and something's wrong. And then he says something to the translator, and he literally takes out a pen and he writes in a D at the end. He's like, it's a card for transit, like a Metro card to get on the train.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, That's a pretty significant detail. You need to tell somebody
Lost in
before you
translation.
fly them from Chicago to Geneva.
Holy crap! So you had a Metro card. They gave you a Metro
So
card.
I didn't sign the contract. I was
Oh,
like,
did you?
this isn't. I didn't. I was like, I'm not playing for this team. And I called my agent because I was like, this is just deceitful.
Deceitful,
So
yeah.
I called my agent. I was like, I'm in Switzerland. Find me another team in Europe, and I'll go there right. Well, I'll pay for the train ticket there right now, or the Ryanair flight right now.
It's crazy. Yeah, it is a bit like, it is a bit helter skelter, isn't it? It's kind of fun. It's an adventure, like, but there's times.
It's always an adventure. I always had a smile on my face, even when the stupidest things happen. I was like, oh, that's Europe. That's European basketball.
Yeah. You should listen to the Flinder Boyd episode because he had some funny stories about just his pro experience and just ending up in Greece, just in the middle of the. He said basically the country was already on edge, and he was playing for AEK, which are like one of the top teams in the country, and he just managed to land a spot on the team, and then Panathinaikos, those kind of two other big teams.
Sure.
So like Ike is number 3, I think, and they've never been relegated from the top league. And that year they had a game and they were about to be relegated, and they ended up losing by a point. And the fans basically were trying to mob to basically take out the players, and they got taken out and put into armored vehicles.
He was on the team that lost.
Yeah. And he said they were trying to kill him basically, and he just said it was absolute pandemonium. But he's got some funny stories just from his experience. Like, it's just crazy, and just guys coming in trying to steal his money, like from his own team.
Oh, really? Yeah, I've never had that happen.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, maybe just Germans are lovely and normal and boring and stuff, but that nothing like that ever happened in our team. But it's just funny. Like, yeah, it's crazy.
But you never can tell. It changes from team to team. It's not even about the country. Because I was when like the situation I was in Austria was fantastic. I still to this day like talk about that. It was a team called Gemuten, and I got there. Everything was set up perfectly, and this is my first year, so it was a great just introduction to me to be like, okay, this is how things should be. Obviously the money's not like stellar, but it's everything was organized. Everything they said would happen happened. And we ended up winning the championship that year, so it was a great year overall.
Cool.
But other guys I talked to in Austria would be like, "Oh my God, you got it made!" Like they were telling me about the problems they'd have with their teams, and it changes from team to team, not just from country to country, but there are countries that have more of a reputation for, not paying on time, and that is pretty. That's also true.
Yeah, that's the impression I
guys played in guys get a contract in Greece, and they'll say like, okay, whatever you signed for, be okay with half.
Yeah. The right guy Ralph Bucci in the UK said this was like years later, just a couple of years later, and he was still trying to get his money from Greece, and it was firstly Greece, so it's apparently a lot of money, and he wasn't.
Oh yeah,
he just wasn't getting it. He just wasn't getting it. It's crazy. Just to wear a time here because we're going on for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And we could probably.
I could do this all day.
Yeah, no, so could I. I was just sitting here like we could just keep chatting for another 2 hours, just because it's 10:30. And
I'm in quarantine, and I'm an actor and screenwriter in Los Angeles. Like we hardly do anything anyway, and now there's even less to do.
It's a good point. Like I ended up talking to a coach for 3 hours. I'm going to have to split. I haven't released the episode yet, but I'm going to have to split it in half. I don't even know what we got into. Like it just went totally off piece and just like
there's plenty you could edit off this one.
Oh no, not at all. No, I've got the Joe Rogan School of Thought. Just leave it all in there, and if you want to listen to it.
Oh, nice. All
right. Okay. The next bit actually was the movies. Like, so you did a little bit on you said you got into like semi-pro, and then the one I saw the clip of, but I never got to see the full thing was Riff Raff. That was 2009, which is
Riff Raff was my film. I wrote and directed it. So that was my I started working on that in the summertime when I was still playing, and by the time we got to shoot it, and it took a couple of years to finally like edit it and get it out there and get it distributed. So it was a grind. I'm glad we got it done. It was kind of it's sort of like now it's like looking at a high school yearbook. It's like looking back, because I wrote it when I was in college. I wrote most of it when I was in college about my summer job in college working as a lifeguard. So it has nothing to do with basketball, which always is, surprised people, because I was a college basketball player, then I was a pro basketball player. I was like, I got a movie, and there's not basketball isn't mentioned in the movie at all. So it's just like a summer comedy, like a teen comedy, coming of age type story. I'm proud of it. I look back fondly at it, but I definitely would have done so many things different if I were doing it now.
I really like the clip
of my years.
It's got something kind of to it. It's kind of like raw, but I really like the clip anyway, but I just never got to. I want to see the whole thing. I just really like I don't know. It reminds me of kind of watching the teen movies, those American teen movies. You kind of had that feel to it.
Yeah, it's American Pie. It's it's got a little more of an edge than that. It's not as slapstick, but we got some great reviews from like Variety and things like that, and there were highlights, of it.
Right.
But yeah, that was my first the first thing I wrote that got produced. And then when I was towards the end of my basketball career, I came out to LA. I started to come out to LA in the summertime, and not only to train out here, because there's a lot of players that live here in the summertime. The summer pro league down here is the best I've ever played in. So I was coming back from Switzerland and Spain, and I was playing against NBA guys all summer. So that was helping me out a lot. But I was also I got my union card for acting, because I was doing basketball commercials, which is funnily, I also would meet guys playing overseas on the commercial sets. So we'd talk about what's going on in this country, and this guy would be like, oh, I'm going to Turkey, I just got a job, so I can't do that commercial. So it was kind of like a little unit of we had a little family going on,
community,
basketball players / actors.
Okay.
And then when I was done playing, after I played in England, this is when this was now 9 years ago, and there was just no money. Like European players were taking nothing to go over there. Nothing, but the only guys that were going to Europe in the mid-levels that were guys just out of college that hadn't played before and didn't have like a salary that they were used to. Now, I never made top dollar, but I was like, I can't go over there. I still have some bills to pay back home.
Yeah.
And I got some of the lowest offers ever after I had averaged like 13 and 10 in England.
That's crazy.
And I still had the passport. So there was just no money. And then I had a couple of injuries. So I didn't really retire. I just kind of stopped playing, because
that's got to be post 2009, like post 2008.
Yeah. It's like 2011, 2012. And I was still getting emails like in 2013 after not playing for a year and a half, 2 years, being like, do you want to come over for this much? And I'd be like, no, I can't. I literally can't afford to do that. Like, I have certain things I have to pay for and back home,
That's crazy. So just a drop off in the whole scene. Sounds like.
Yeah, but I was fine with that, because by that time I got an agent for acting. I had a manager for writing. I had, my scripts were being sent out. I was taking meetings. I'd started to like move into my career now. So that's what I wanted to do anyway. And like you said, like, you shouldn't go to Europe as a basketball player thinking I'm going to make a ton of money, and this is going to be my career. If you're going to be a coach, like if that's your aspiration, then definitely play as long as you can and start coaching while you're playing. But I never wanted to go that route. So for me, playing was, I was on the court, I'm in the game, I want my team to win, I'm going to do everything for my team. But off the court, my mind wasn't on basketball. I didn't want a career in basketball. I didn't want a career in, broadcast or anything like that. So I was doing it for the experience. And after a couple of years, once it kind of fizzled that, like, I'm probably not going to make the NBA. Not like I ever thought I was going to do that, but once that was completely out of my mind, like I've plateaued, in Europe. Like, I'm probably not going to get past, like, the second tier of Europe. I was fine with that because I'd had such great experiences. I was able to travel the world, and I was still playing with the Irish team. So, like, even the countries I lived in several countries, permanently. I'm sorry, not permanently, like temporarily, but even just visiting countries, I had the experience with the Irish team. We went to Cyprus, we went to Malta, we went to Lithuania, we went to Romania, we went all over the place, and that's what I treasure from that time. It was never about the money. I would have loved to make more money, but it was never like I had a great experience. That was what I was paid with, was the experience.
Yeah, yeah, and that makes sense. And it's interesting that the kind of the theme I'm getting and talking to everyone is that they almost they eventually came to a point where they kind of thought there's something else I'm going to be doing. Sort of like, it was always a kind of a, I mean, it can only ever be a temporary thing, right? You can only ever get to a certain point, and then you're physically going to have to stop playing anyway. So, sure. I mean, like you said, you kind of got to look at it like,
we're not all Vince Carter.
We're not all Vince Carter. Yeah, unbelievable. He's not playing again this year, is he? No,
he's still on Sacramento or Brooklyn.
He did do one more year.
Yeah, he's 42.
That guy needs to stop. He needs to stop. I thought I was bad, but he needs to stop. So yeah, no, it's just really, really cool that you wrote that in the summer, that the riffraff, which kind of ended up then leading to you doing what you're doing now, which I think is incredible. It's like, in an off season essentially, and you might not have done that had you, it could have just been so different that you'd not written that. You wouldn't be doing what you're doing now. You'd be doing something completely different. It's kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it could have. There's so many times where one little thing could have changed everything. I look back. I had opportunities like I talked about in high school. I had opportunities. I played against some of the top talent, and there were times where I felt personally that I was, better than this guy, even though he's getting the top offers, and that I backed it up on the court. I felt like, why am I not getting this validation that I feel myself for how good I am? And looking back, I still think that that's true. But at the same time, one turn the other way, it's like, well, there were lots of things I could have not been able to do had it gone the wrong way. Had I made the wrong decision, had I not made the right decision back then, about my career, or just dumb luck. I had basically had a different agent every year. I knew guys that signed with an agent right out of college, and they stayed with the same agent the whole time. And that person, and I'd be so jealous of guys that would like hang out with their agent and have drinks with their agent in the off season and like go on vacations with their agent. Like, I never had that. Had I had an agent, maybe I would have had a better career and been able to get better places and better situations that paid me all my money. But on the other sense, like, there was a chance that I could have never, if I didn't have the Irish passport, maybe they wouldn't have looked at me the same way. Maybe I wouldn't have got the offers that I had, So there's so many little things that had to add up just to get, where I got.
It's so crazy. Just the path is just crazy. And the fact that you ended up playing for the Irish team, and then, it's mad. And being all over Europe, in Japan, that's crazy. And then just the fact that you wrote that during the summer, I mean, I just think that's crazy. So you wrote that in 2008, was it the riffraff? That was your first time writing as well.
Well, I started writing it in college because it was based on my experiences as a lifeguard that was my only like summer job when I was in college. I'd go back to Chicago and do that on the beach in Chicago. Which a lot of people don't realize there's a beach in Chicago, but the whole city is on a beach.
I know. I actually, by the way, I never told you this, but I went to, because you told me about this, and then I ended up going to America, and for a summer for a camp coaching kids from North Chicago. I actually wrote down Highland Park. Highland Park. It's like a Jewish.
Highland Park.
So, you know,
yeah,
very very well
up in the world.
well, interesting enough, it's like one of the top 10 camps in America. It's a Jewish. I was say Jewish camp, not like a Jew, like a Jewish. It's a camp, and it's run by a Jewish. It's basically Jewish community from Highland Park.
Sure, yeah.
And all the kids attended. They're extremely wealthy, very affluent kind of background, and like their parents would turn up. They do 8-week camp, and their parents would turn up and give you like a bloody iPad or something for, you know, they were just really, really wealthy. And it was called Lake of the Woods Camp. It was in Decatur, Michigan, which was
Michigan. I don't know Decatur.
Yeah.
I know Decatur, Illinois. You said in Michigan. You said
Decatur, Michigan. Yeah, it's a real like in the middle of Michigan.
You were coaching up there?
Yeah. So one of my mates told me about the camp, and he said you can just go over and coach basketball over there. And I just kind of
nice.
Yeah, so I just went and did it. But then we got to go to the Lake Michigan. Is what I was trying to say.
Sure.
So
you know about the beach, yeah.
So I went to the beach, and I was thinking of you saying about there's a beach, and I was like, and then I went to the beach. There's St. John's or something it was called.
St. Joseph.
Could be St. Joseph, yeah.
St. Joseph, Michigan is just across the lake from Chicago. And when I say across the lake, it's you can't see the other side. It looks like an ocean.
Could be St. Joseph's then, yeah. Beautiful little towns the whole way up the Lake Michigan. Gorgeous.
Yeah, so that's where I went to college first. My first college was Grand Valley State in Michigan, which is just past St. Joe's, coming up around Indiana from Chicago.
It's beautiful there. The houses with the flags, and they're all really white, and it's just so nice there. I was so surprised. And then it's like a beach, like a proper beach, and yeah. So yeah, I just had been there, but obviously you're talking about it's like you're at the sea.
Yeah, it's a freshwater ocean. I always tell people, I mean, it's better than the ocean because you can swim in it and not worry about getting undertow or, you know, a 10-foot wave crashing down on you.
Yeah, that's true.
There's no sharks.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point. So hold on, there was something else there. So then what else here did you have? I had written down. There was a couple of other movies here. Pitch.
You know my IMDb?
Yeah, I just tried to look that up because I didn't know what else to
Pitch was awesome. I got to play a Major League Baseball player.
All right, okay, cool.
I got to put on a uniform and everything. I felt like a little kid because that was my first love, was baseball growing up. And then I just got too tall. I played a pitcher, which is weird. I don't know if you know baseball that well, but pitching is a completely different set of muscle usage than being a position player. So I had to and I had never been a pitcher when I was a baseball player. So luckily my brother was a pitcher. Luckily I had a friend out here that played minor league baseball as a pitcher. So I was able to do some workouts and get my motion down. But he's still watching now. A real baseball player watches my stretch and my rotation, and you can tell I'm an actor trying to play a baseball player. I'm not a real baseball player. But that was a lot of fun. That was a show on Fox about a girl who became the first female major league player. Right. So
playing in the men's league, basically.
So yeah, and they had the approval of Major League Baseball. They used all the real uniforms and shot in the real ballparks, and it was. I won't say anything about the quality of the show, but in terms of the writing, but it was a whole lot of fun to be a part of it. You know, we shot in the park in San Diego, in the Padres park. So it was like I'm on the pitching mound in a stadium of 50,000 people or 40,000 people. So it was great.
That's cool. The other one I saw
Definitely
was,
the most fun acting experience I've had.
oh really? Is it? It looked like a good show. I haven't actually seen it before, but the other one was Alone in the Dead of Night. Sorry, was this another one?
Oh, and the other thing about Pitch is that you did you watch Saved by the Bell? The
Yeah.
show Saved by the Bell.
Yeah, Saved by the Bell.
So Zach Morris from Saved by the Bell, that actor, he's the star of the show Pitch.
Wasn't he a detective in some show? I don't know if you follow that guy. Zach,
I'm
the blonde,
sure
the blondie guy.
The blonde guy, yeah.
Because I ended up watching some detective show, and he was the guy, and I was like, that's the guy from Saved by the Bell. Saved by the Bell.
Great actor. Actually has a ton of range, not just Zach Morris. And yeah, he was in the scene that I did. The one scene with speaking lines that I did for Pitch, and it was kind of cool just to be just me
Zach
and him.
Morris.
We're on opposite teams, and he's kind of like, there's a brawl going on, but we know each other, so he's like, stepping me away from his teammates, and we're having a little back and forth. And that was kind of fun because that was like a guy who I kind of grew up watching on TV. So
yeah, that's crazy.
Tons of fun.
I almost want to tell you this story. I'll tell you. Did you ever see the movie? Everything's gone from my head. Road Trip.
Sure.
It's like one of those teen movies.
With Stifler from American Pie.
Yes, Stifler is in it. Yeah, I forgot about that. Stifler's in it, right? So you know that there's one of the guys in the group, and it's the goofy. He kind of steals the show, actually. I thought.
Yeah.
The skinny guy.
The skinny guy. Yeah.
Skinny guy, right? Listen to this, right? So I've lived in London for the last 5 years. I moved back last year, right? And we used to go to this bar. It's in Soho. You know London? Pretty good.
Not that well, but I know Soho. I mean, I know the neighborhood Soho.
So we're in Soho. There's loads of cool bars there. So we used to go there every now and then. And there was one particular bar that mate used to go to because we're into music, called Ain't Nothing But the Blues. And it used to be a late bar. It used to be open until 3. And you get loads of funky bands in there. And we're in there one night and we're just drinking pints, listening to an amazing band. There was always amazing music in there. They'd play like swing music and stuff like that. And we're in there anyway, having pints. And I don't know how I did it. Must be some skill I have. I turned around and this guy had like a big beard. He had like a thicker than this. And I looked around and I said, I just kind of looked at him and I recognized him. And there's no way I could have recognized him because he looked completely different, this massive beard. And I just looked at him and I said, and then I just stared at him for a second. I went, "You're the guy from Road Trip." And he's like, "Yeah, how'd you know that?" And it was the skinny guy. And I was like,
"Oh, that's great."
So, because I love that movie and I just didn't know his name. I was like, "Mate, you were so good in that movie. You totally stole the show." And I'd had a few drinks on me, so the enthusiasm was getting the better of me. And he was loving it. And he was telling me his best mates, Morgan Freeman, and all this stuff.
Oh, that's great.
So we ended up going out with this guy. So we ended up going out in Soho with this guy the whole night, just drinking and having so much fun. And he was a great guy. And he was with his handler, some handler guy. And he was like, "Right, we've got to go now." So they just left.
Was he living there or just visiting?
Yeah, I think he moved to London for a while. He was like 40 and had just kind of like living this crazy life. I don't know.
That's funny. I wonder if he was over there working.
He was doing something. He was in the theater. That's what it was. He was doing a theater.
That makes sense.
And he had done a movie 2 years before. That's what he'd done reasonably well. You should look him up now, actually. But it's just funny randomly.
I'll call him up. I was like, "Hey, remember Mark? I know Mark."
Yeah, he's not going to remember my name, but it was just a random story. A funny night. You run into a guy from like a teen movie, and you're like, "Oh,
yeah."
And we ended up hanging out. So that was fun. All right, I'm just aware of time here, so I wrote down 3 questions. So let's just go for these. They're totally random questions that just came into my head that I thought you might. I just do this every time. So, top 3 comedians, or top 2 even, or who's your guys now? Who would you put on? I know you probably listen to comedy, right?
Yeah, I love stand up. I that's my go-to whenever if you come to visit LA, I take anyone that comes visit to a stand up comedy
Awesome.
because
I had a feeling you'd like
the,
comedy. Yeah.
it's the best way because top comedians live here, so they'll go to little comedy rooms and work out their material any night of the week. I can't tell you, I got a list a mile long, like the famous comedians that I've seen, like because my cousins were in town on a Wednesday night and we went there at like 11:30 and sat in a room of about 30 people, and it's cramped in, and you have to buy your drinks, so the waitress is like coming through the aisles, and it's like Mark Maron will be up there, or Dave Chappelle will be up there. Dave Chappelle would be my number one.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Love him. I love.
He's
I love
considered
Bill
the GOAT.
Burr.
He's on my list.
Chappelle's the best, man. Like he could.
Did you listen to his latest
does.
special? Did you listen to the OJ
Yes.
one? Oh my God,
it's amazing.
It was genius. It was just genius. I loved it. Weirdly, I knew you'd like comedy. I just wrote that was the first question. I was like, I bet she likes comedy. I bet she's into comedy. And Bill Burr was on my list, and I was like, I wonder.
Bill Burr for sure.
And probably Louis C.K. was on your list until he exposed himself to some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked Louis C.K. I wasn't like he's the god. I found it was serviceable. Like I'd enjoy a special, but I wouldn't be like, oh, I gotta watch that one again. Whereas like Chappelle, like if I saw it like 2 months ago, somebody's like we're watching Chappelle, I'd be like, let's do it. I just it doesn't matter. You could rewatch it over and over.
Yeah, he's brilliant. He's excellent. Anyone else?
I love Bill Burr. I love John Mulaney.
Yeah, I like John. Okay, I like John Mulaney. There's a part of me that kind of, it's just personal preference. He's kind of he's a bit too preppy or a bit too like I get what he's doing, but I'm just like he's almost too like I'm like okay, you're kind of he plays up to the whole whatever he's trying to do. I don't know. I like him. I do like it. I watch a lot of comedy, so I do like John Mulaney. There's something about him that kind of grates on me. I can listen to a certain
amount. Okay, I like John Mulaney, and I randomly I went to high school with him, but I wasn't like in contact with him. So like I knew him in high school. And then all of a sudden I hear like John Mulaney got a special, and I'm like, there's a comedian named John Mulaney. I went to a high school guy named John Mulaney, and it was him.
He was in your like class or in your.
He was a year younger than me.
No way, that's crazy. In your high school.
Yeah. So and then some of his specials, he talks about like things that happened when he was growing up, and I'm like, that's quite similar. Like I just kind of chuckle, like, yep, that's what he's revealing all the secrets,
I don't get me wrong, he is really good. I just something.
I don't take offense. I think he's funny. He's not like one of my favorites, but he's just respect him.
Yeah.
And I like his shtick. Like I like what he does.
Exactly. Yeah, it's kind of unique.
Funny? Like young people love him. I got a 15-year-old niece, and she says all of her, like, she wouldn't believe that my sister went to the same high school as him because like all of her friends are in love with him. And I thought that was hilarious. I was like, oh, that does make sense. I could see how he would appeal to like.
He's kind of like he's camp. He's kind of camp, like a camp straight guy. You know what I mean? Like he's kind of got that. Yeah. He actually jokes about the fact that people think he's gay. Like he's kind of that's his kind of shtick.
He's got the self-deprecating,
self-deprecating stuff. Yeah. So
what about you? Who are yours?
Bill Burr's one. I did love Louis C.K. When the stuff came out, I was like, he made me laugh out loud really hard. I like some British comedians. I suppose Ricky Gervais, Chappelle. There's a couple of British guys that I love. There's an American guy, and he's not well known, but he had me in stitches. I kept watching him for a while. His name is gone from my head. What British guys do I love?
Who's he got? Jimmy Carr?
Yeah, I like Jimmy Carr. Jimmy's like very one-liner the whole time.
He's very one-liner, yeah.
But also hilarious because he's really quick. and he'll just
How
respond.
about Tommy Tiernan?
Yeah, obviously love Tommy. Like
He's the king.
he's the king. Yeah, he's the king of Irish comedy. He's up there. Like he's very like Irish people love him because he's really Irish. If you know what I mean. He's like the man. Obviously Billy Connolly from back in the day, but like modern comedians. Yeah, I'm just trying to think British comedian. There's a Scottish guy. He's a really dark sense of humor. I must send these guys on to you. Yeah, I can have a listen.
Well, who's the Scottish guy that has the whole bit about Hoose Race? Hoose Race. You remember that guy?
It's not Billy. It's not Billy Connolly.
It's not Billy Connolly. It's shit. When I was in Dublin, I was staying in Dublin and like flicking channels, and I came across him, and I just was in love. I was entranced by him. I couldn't.
Scottish.
I didn't remember his name though. And then when I got back to the States, I was trying to look it up, and I was like, I can't find this guy.
Is he a young guy? Is he a young guy?
Probably 40s.
Ah, okay. He doesn't have a big beard. He's not like ginger guy. Big beard now. Oh, I know who you're talking about. Kevin Bridges. No?
Kevin Bridges. That's it. I knew it was Kevin something.
And he was talking about Chad Hogan. He's like Chad Hogan. He goes to America and he meets a guy. Oh no, this is what it was. He does a bit about Chad Hogan, and he goes like an American guy with a name like Chad Hogan or something like that. And then this guy called Chad Hogan actually gets in contact with him and said, I'm actually called Chad Hogan. And then he goes over to America to his house and goes to a pool party with Chad Hogan. It's ridiculous. So funny.
That sounds perfect. Sounds perfect.
So Kevin Bridges is right up there. I listen to him a lot. He is hilarious. And actually, interestingly, when I lived in Scotland and I studied there, and he's from Glasgow, and they have the sharpest wit of any people you meet in the world. They're just absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, half of the fun with watching him was trying to figure out what he's saying. You know?
Yeah, you have to kind of you have to get used to the accent. It's very thick. It's very thick. The Glaswegian accent.
So you guys, like when I was staying in Ireland, when I was staying in England, you guys your ear is so much sharper than ours is, because you have so many different accents in a smaller place. You go over, and it's funny because my wife and I are working on something right now where we're gonna talk to different people about their accents and talk to actors about how to do different accents. And we were just like talking to so many people that, I mean, in the States is so big, and there are different accents in the States, but you're not gonna be able to not understand someone for the most part, except for maybe like in rural Mississippi or something like that. Whereas you go to Ireland, you go to the UK, every 20 miles is a completely different accent, and sometimes incomprehensible, especially for outsiders. So like
that's true. Yeah,
I have a decent ear because I've been over there so much, but like I'll tell people about movies, you know, like that are based there, and they got to watch them with subtitles. You know, like Peaky Blinders, great example.
Peaky Blinders,
like if you're not used to hearing different British accents, you need subtitles to watch that show.
Yeah, you know? they got the Bromley accent, the Birmingham accent is, and actually Cillian Murphy's Irish, and he's doing a Bromley accent, which is a difficult accent to say. If you can say a few words in it with a chips and gravy, you can say like, you know, there's a couple of phrases you could get into, but he's like talking. I don't know how they do that. Like, that's unbelievable. He's got one of the, what do they call it? Like a coach or like a
dialect coach. Yeah,
dialect coach or something like that.
I mean, he's got to. He's wonderful. And with other characters, like he's in a scene with Sam Neill. Sam Neill's playing an Ulsterman, and he's English, and then Cillian Murphy's playing Birmingham, and he's from Ireland. It's great. They're so talented.
I noticed that too. I wasn't sure then if he was actually Northern Irish, because it was like that accent is spot on. Like, it's really good. So yeah, the fact you said it makes me double think twice, but I'm pretty sure he's English. I think
I've seen him in
so
many other things, but I'm just guessing. But I believe so.
I seen Cillian Murphy in the stage in London. I can't remember the name of the show. He was unbelievable. He played like 6 different characters and just did all of them. It was unbelievable. He was, and the quote was like, he's, I can't remember even the quote now, but he was just, it was something else to watch him. He blew me away. He was unbelievable.
That's a perfect show for him. I've been a big fan of his since, When the Shakes the Barley and Breakfast on Pluto, and he's done so much.
28
What was that movie about? What's that?
28 Days Later was the zombie one.
28 Days Later was great. What's the movie he did? What's the movie he did about different stories in Dublin with Colin Farrell?
I haven't seen that one.
Oh no, I know you have. You just can't. Everybody, I know you've seen it. The opening scene, Colin Farrell is like sweet talking this girl in a mall, and then he ends up robbing her. It's one word. I can't remember. Anyway,
it's gone. Yeah.
Sorry,
I've probably seen it. I just can't think of it. Okay.
Anyway,
two more questions.
Here's the thing. Hold on. Cillian Murphy, you puts brown sauce in his tea, and he. Do you remember that movie? Oh, it's great.
What's it called again? I think I know the one. I think I know the one you're talking about, but I think I've only seen half of the movie, so maybe you need to go back.
Okay.
Anyway, he is a legend. You got two questions left.
I should have a drink here.
I know I should have got some beers.
It's nighttime for you. Jeez, it's like 10 p.m. there.
It's it's 11 now.
11 now.
Last Dance. Wah Wah Wee Wah or Boo Boo Baba?
Last Dance. Good question. I liked it. Again, so I grew up in Chicago. So of course I'm a Bulls fan, but I grew up at a time when the entire world was Bulls fans. So it didn't really feel like our team as much. And I've talked to a lot of other people from Chicago about this, is that we love the Bears. We love one of the two baseball teams, but the Bulls are like, yeah, we love them. We were all huge Bulls fans and always huge Michael Jordan fans. But when everybody in the world, when people in China are like, cheering for the Bulls, we didn't have that sense. So it was fun to like look back and see how the rest of the world saw the Bulls at that time, because we grew up around it. Like my high school is down the street from Chicago Stadium, now United Center. So it's like I did like, the one thing I liked about that documentary was that it really wasn't about the Bulls. It was about Michael Jordan and what he was thinking the whole time. It should have been called like Inside Jordan's Brain or something, and that's what I think the most out of it, because that dude is still so competitive and has such a need to just be the best. And it's just an amazing study. Like I'm just like, I was just in awe that he still has that killer instinct, to this day. And that was the fun part about it. When he was talking about like different things that he would say back then to other people just to get them riled up or just to get them, to be more competitive. I mean, he was the ultimate, just the ultimate mixture of hard work and competitiveness combined with talent.
Yes.
I mean, there's never been anything like that.
That's right. That's so true. Yeah.
The documentary on the whole, I didn't think it was stellar. I didn't think it was amazing. I thought it was really choppy. The going back and forth. Like I get what they were trying to do, but it I don't know. It seemed like overkill.
Jumped around too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of felt like that too. And then actually, I thought, I mean, is it just me or is this jumping around a lot with the timelines? And then somebody had a 5-second video of like someone drawing a thing doing this. This is how the documentary was. So obviously, a lot of people thought that. So I don't know. I'm not sure like why they edited it like that, but it was just too much, because it was hard to almost follow the story, because they were going back to 1998, then back to 1993, and then 86, and then you're like, why are we jumping around this much? It's good to you just couldn't kind of follow it properly. Something I was going to say, it was just the point you were making about Jordan just being the ultimate competitor. Like even when he was talking about like the guy, I think it was a director asking him the questions, and he kind of said to him, do you remember this game? And then he's like, oh yeah, that's when he said that to me, and I took that personal. He's still
Yeah.
living the emotion.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy. I was like, this guy's crazy.
Yeah, it
Hadn't lost it.
it could be called crazy, it could be called genius, it could be called it's it's something I don't have. I know that.
When you can't like,
And so I'm just a spectator, and that's the thing. Like even as an athlete, I'm like, you know, I of course I always everyone wanted to be like Jordan physically, but to get into that headspace, you know, that's the goal for like a real athlete, someone trying to compete at the top level or at any level really, to have that sense of just focus on the game and be able to just be to block out everything else.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
um,
Yeah, it's almost like the way I look at it is you almost need to have that extreme personality to push yourself to that level where you just don't care. It's almost like you can't think about anything else and don't have a lot of empathy for other people when you're in that space. Like when you're just thinking about basketball, I don't care what I'm like. This is what I'm trying to do. It's just that locked in kind of moment. He just has that, and as soon as you start talking about basketball, he just switches back into it. He doesn't miss a beat. You know what I mean? Okay, cool. So last question. Okay, this is a good one to finish on.
let's go.
Basketball highlight. You may have kind of answered this, but what was your basketball highlight?
Like on the court or in my career?
Well, that's a good. Yeah, I guess in your career,
Because I don't know the answer to either.
Right. Like, what was your like favorite kind of? I think you kind of said like playing for the Irish team and the experience there. Was that like one of the things that you kind of? Is that like your
playing
favorite?
for the Irish team was the best part of playing professionally for me.
Okay.
Not only, you know, first and foremost with the relationships I made, some of my best friends to this day are guys that I played with the Irish team, and even like you and I here, like we played 1 year together, and anyone who I played 1 year with the Irish team with, I can meet up and it's just like old times. Like it snap right back into it. And it's great.
That's true.
So that would be my number one. But also the fact that I was really introduced to my father's, not my grandparents' homeland. You know, like that was something that really meant a lot to me. I know it sounds like kind of corny, but you know, I love going to Ireland. Like Ireland is like more of a second home to me now than anywhere else. And I try to go once a year. I've been going more in the last couple of years because of film work over there. And again, because I have the Irish passport, I'm able to work over there as a citizen and not have to like go through any like permit process and stuff like that. So it's another like stroke of luck that I have that advantage. But for me, I love going to Ireland anyway, and I love living there temporarily, or you know, maybe permanently one day. Who knows? I live in LA. Nobody lives in LA permanently, so
it sounds like
I might end up over there at least for a little while. And so now I'm getting. I went to Ireland originally for basketball, and I got to know the basketball community. Now I'm going for film and TV, and I'm getting to know that community as well. So I'm making more friends every time I go over there. I'm closer with my relatives in Ireland than I was before, obviously, because the only time I knew them before was when they visited Chicago, and so now I'm closer with them, and so that's a huge part of my career, my basketball career, was being able to like find another home, you know, to be able to have another country that I actually could call home, and not feel like I'm an outsider or a carpetbagger coming in and pretending that this is my home, and everyone else like, you know, get out of here. Ireland isn't like that, as you know. I mean, Ireland is the most welcoming country to outsiders that there is, you know. Definitely more than my country now. And a lot more so than other European countries. So
okay.
You know, We can have a whole nother podcast about that stuff. About what's going on outside my door right now,
dude. That's crazy. Yeah. We'll leave that for the next time we chat. But like, it's nice to hear that. Just like, cause I mean, you know, if you almost take it not take it for granted, but you kind of do, because you grew up in Ireland, and only because I left when I was 18 and came back now that I'm 36. I appreciate Ireland more. Maybe that's maybe not fair to say, but I don't take it for granted. Whereas if you'd never left, you're in it the whole time, so you don't realize how warm people are. When you live in like London, for example, for 5 years, then you realize like it's not the same. Like it's just like people are not as warm, and they're not as friendly. And obviously, because you're in a city and you can't stop every person, you know, millions of people walking by and just say hello to everybody. Like that's not realistic either. But just generally, like I used to like come back, and I used to love coming back because I kind of missed it so much. So I do get like, it's nice to hear that, you know, somebody had that experience and kind of has that love for Ireland now. That's crazy that so you're doing like work over here now. I didn't know that in some kind of capacity. Is this?
I've got a lot of the projects I'm working on as a writer. I do a lot of historical stuff. So I'm doing a lot of research in Ireland. I write a lot of Irish historical. Like right now, I'm working on a mini series, like something that I would be able to sell to like a Netflix or an HBO kind of thing. That's based in Irish history, so it would be shot partly over there if it got to that point.
That's crazy.
So it's that kind of stuff that.
I actually had written down here, you should totally do something about Irish history.
Oh yeah, no, it's already happening. I mean, that's my passion now, you know, like how basketball was. Wow. You know, that's what I want to get done.
You have to send me that script. Not that I'm not going to try and sell it, but I'd love to read it.
I would love you to read it. I would love for you to try to sell it, because we need all the help we can get.
Yeah, well, there's an Irish film board there, you know. But no, that's really interesting. I love Irish history as well. I read a lot about it. Okay, that's a separate thing. We can chat about that anyway offline. But
absolutely.
And then the basket. There's a final bit here. So best player you. I wanted to ask you, who's your favorite guy on the national team? That put you on the spot. Is that unfair to pick someone favorite guy?
My least favorite guy, how about that, is definitely Connor Grace. No, I'm just kidding. No,
just cut that clip out.
I couldn't name one. From the early days, I learned so much, honestly. It's funnily enough, I learned from basketball and on and off the court from Pat Burke, Marty Conlon, Danny Callahan. Because they were all the other three big guys that were on the team, and they were all in their early to mid 30s by the time when I was just out of college. So they taught me a lot, you know, physically on the court, but also just like living in Europe and being an American with an Irish passport. So they were like my big brothers. So they were my favorites early on. I don't want to say favorites. That's like a silly word, but I was closest to them.
Besties.
Connor Grace is, I consider him one of my best friends. I love the guy because every year I play on the team, he was on the team, so we always had that connection. Mike Williams, I played with a couple of years. He was a guy like me from the States that grew up, didn't get the top offers. And then because he was a late bloomer and he was a D2 guy, but then he grew to be 7 feet. So he had some looks in the NBA. He had some D-League looks, and he played top level Italy. But him and I became friends in the Irish team after being opponents in Switzerland. And he'll argue this, but I did dunk on him. That's how we first met. I dunked on him in the playoffs. And he tells the story that makes me look like an asshole, because apparently in his mind, I dunked on him and I pulled myself up to the rim and screamed. I don't remember doing that. I was never that type of player, but I also can't say that I didn't do that. But anyway, he thought I was an asshole,
I'd probably
he didn't
bet
know
you
I was
probably did do
Irish.
that. He didn't know you're Irish.
He didn't know I was Irish. I didn't know he was Irish. And then the next year, he played with the national team. So we hated each other on the court, and then we became buddies on the team. And fun. And now he's a lawyer. He lives in LA, so we still see each other now. We play some beach volleyball. Our goal is to be the Irish beach volleyball national team. So one day.
The Irish beach volleyball national team. If there is one, you guys should definitely be on it for sure.
Well, that's another script that I wrote. Outside of the historical stuff, I wrote a screwball comedy about two NBA players that get kicked out of the NBA, and they both have Irish citizenship, so they become the Irish beach volleyball national team. Well, so that's funny. I think it's going to be a huge hit.
That's the funniest thing I've heard on any of my episodes. So that's a very funny notion. Yeah, I love that. Definitely like that.
I got to mention though, after all the Americans left the team, Jason Killeen and Paul Cummins and Ian O'Boyle, those guys, like they took me under the wing, being the only foreigner on the team, and they were great and so much fun on and off the court. So like, you know, Isaac Westbrook's, when I go to Dublin, I'll call those guys and we'll hang out like it's no problem, no big deal at all. You know, like no time has passed.
That's crazy.
Did you play with Kieran O'Brien?
Kieran O'Brien, I would say no.
I think he only played 1 year. Do you know Kieran?
I know the face. I definitely know who you're talking about, Kieran O'Brien. Is he? Did you meet up with him as well?
Kieran's he's a really great friend. But we joke about it because he only played 1 year, I think, and I thought maybe it was the year you played, but no, I guess it wasn't. But Kieran's a great guy. I think he still plays for Neptune. Oh, no, not Neptune. He was playing for one of the Dublin teams. Colester. He was playing for Colester.
Colester. I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah, I get confused. I've been away for so long that I'm still learning the guys that are here. Like, so, just been out of the scene. I'm still trying to pick up names. That's so cool that you've come back so much. Like, I just kind of assumed you'd been in LA, hadn't been able to come back, hadn't really seen the guys, had maybe not kept in contact. Because you don't know.
For a couple of years, yeah. For a while there, I was just trying to like make my way out here, and I didn't really get to do any traveling. And then after I kind of got settled with a representation and my writing was getting out there, and I was putting out stuff, even though I wasn't living in or visiting Ireland, I was putting out stuff that was based there or could be shot there. So that's when we started reaching out to Irish producers. And making those connections there. And so that when I went over there to visit, I took an extended visit. I stayed about a month, and I was able to meet a lot of those producers and just establish those relationships that I'm still working with today. So
that's cool. That's amazing. Cool. I'd love to hear more about all the stuff in Ireland that you're doing, but that's probably another whole podcast.
Yeah, no, I mean it's all just stuff in the works, you know. It's not green lit yet, so if it was, I'd be over there shooting. But you know, there's always something.
It's always
something going. Yeah, always something in the works.
It sounds amazing.
And that's in LA. Like whenever you meet up with someone in LA, it's like, oh, what are you working on now? It's always something different because hardly anything ever gets made. Everyone just talks about stuff getting made.
Yeah, well, sure. It's all about that. I mean, like, look, you gotta write it and put it out there. And do you find yourself having to do like pitches? Like, do you actually have to pitch
all the time? Yeah,
oh, really. So you got like an elevator pitch.
Pitch meetings left and right, and then it's the question of like, well, is this something you want to pitch, or is this something you want to shoot yourself? So that whatever, you know, you shoot a trailer for something, and then you pitch that as the project, so they can see a little something, you know, because executives. They need to see it for themselves. They can't imagine it.
It's hard to bring it to life with your words. Whereas if you have a clip, but then you have to do a clip of something that might not be what you actually are going to have.
Right. And you might not have the money to do even a clip the way you want it to, you know, because depending on what it's about, you know, I can't just go out and shoot 2 minutes of a period piece, you know, of a historical thing.
Yeah.
Set in Ireland, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I just actually watched Vikings and was it The Lost Kingdom? Have you seen those two?
Vikings, yes. Lost Kingdom, no.
It's pretty good. It's mostly based in the UK, obviously. But
Lost Kingdom is that's like a medieval setting, right? As well.
It's around the time of the Vikings, so it's a crossover with the Danes come down into it's actually Northumbria, and then they kind of go into, it was like Wessex, it was East Anglia, the kind of various kingdoms of England. I think there was 4: Northumbria.
Sure.
So, anyway, I won't get into that, but basically, it's really, really cool.
And then there was River Run and Winterfell and the Wall. Okay, I remember. Yeah, I remember history.
Love the Lord of the Rings, my favorite book. Anyway, listen, Justin, I'm just aware of time, so
you tell me. I'm sorry to keep you so long.
Not at all. Not at all. It's been an absolute pleasure. I could probably keep going for another hour, easy. But I just for the sake of the length of the podcast, I suppose. So just thanks for coming on. It's been absolutely brilliant. We'll probably
thanks for having me, man. This is great. I love what you're doing, and can't wait to see more. And next time I'm in Dublin, we're gonna get in touch.
100%. That's definitely happening. Thanks again, Justin. Appreciate it.
All right, brother. Have a good day.
Cheers. Ciao.